3D printing for tabletop RPG is amazing. In my mind, there's no question about it. No matter if you print custom terrain with files you found for free on the internet or you paid for, or if you print out custom characters from Hero Forge or Eldritch Foundry, if you print monsters for free from Thingiverse, or if you pay artists for the STL files, maybe you get a monthly description and a huge pack of awesome monsters every month to put onto the table. There's a lot you can do with 3D printing. I will also not tell you that 3D printing is super cheap and easy and anyone can get into it. So today I want to show you what you can do with 3D printing, and I want to discuss how hard it is to actually print it, to do it and get good results, and how expensive it is. In the end, answer the question, is it worth it to get into 3D printing for tabletop RPGs? If this interests you, please like and subscribe, and let's get into the video. First question I want to answer is where to get 3D files for miniature. Short of making them yourself with a program like this Mesh Mixer or Blender, which you can both download and use for free. So even if you're not going into modeling, these can be great to view models or modify models you get elsewhere. But usually the first address you should check out is Thingiverse. On Thingiverse you find a huge selection of user-created 3D files that you can download and print for free. You can leave a donation to most artists, but you don't have to pay anything. So if you're looking for a mini for an NPC or monster, you can just search for a goblin, for example, and there will be a number of files. Some of them actually pretty good. And you should be able to find any monster from the standard D&D monster manual in here, plus a few extra. But where this really shines, if you're looking for terrain, like tabletop terrain, you'll find a huge selection of just 3D printable scatter terrain or even dungeon terrain. One of the standards that the community has settled on is OpenLog, written together. If you search for that, you find a selection of terrain like this that uses the OpenLog standard. That actually means these clips that are used to connect the walls and floor tiles and how they connect. And since it is open source, any creator can use the OpenLog system to create their own terrain, and it will connect and work beautifully together with any other OpenLog terrain. You can also get user-created magnetic clips where you can put in a ball magnet and then easily connect and disconnect these tiles. Because this is an open standard, there's just so much variety and user-created content. It's quite amazing. One system that uses the OpenLog, I think the system that innovated is OpenForge. OpenForge is a series of dungeon terrain, and I should really be looking for a collection. OpenForge started as a collection of dungeon tiles, such as these, made by Devin Jones. A good place to start is probably OpenForge 2 Dungeon Stone series, where you will find a lot of building pieces for like a normal dungeon made by Devin Jones himself, and also other users who have been remixing and reusing his design, or just using the OpenLog system to make OpenForge 2.0 compatible terrain. And you've got a huge selection in here alone. But you also got caves, taverns, so you can make your dungeons look like caves or mines, selection for that, and townhouses and taverns. One thing that I've personally printed out is this dungeon sticks. They are not meant to use their own floor tiles. You can use them just on your regular old battle map or ultimate dungeon terrain, just to put down a few stone walls. If you're looking for something and can't find it on Thingiverse, then your next address should be my mini factory. In here you will again find huge number of 3D files made by talented artists. Once again, you can find any D&D monster, huge selection of monsters and heroes and everything. You can even subscribe to certain artists and get monthly subscriptions for whole model sets, and these can be quite huge and extensive. And what I've made on here is a collection, so if you find any model you like, let's try Beholder again. If you find any model you like, you can add it to a collection. This is the collection I've made with potential monsters for my upcoming campaign. So on my mini factory you have got a huge selection, great minis that usually come pre-supported, have been test printed and will print great, but you have to pay for the models. If you're looking for custom character models, then Hero Forge is a good place to start. In here you've got a character editor that is quite extensive, with a lot of different options. And you can even adjust poses in minute detail to get exactly, or let's say at least approximately, the character model you want. And they offer a print service for $20, but if you're in Europe they will ship overseas, and that can take a long time and be quite expensive. Or you can get the STL download for $8 and then print it out yourself. And you can also use Mesh Mixer to remodel it and and resize it any way you want. Another address that offers a very similar service is Eldritch Foundry, with slightly different models and equipment, and here you can get the digital download for the STL for just $5. So now you've got your STL files, your monsters, your custom minis, how to actually print them out. Let me show you how you would print some of these stock room barricades as an example of a small piece of scatter terrain. Let's go into Cura, search at my huge 3D file. Let's open all of the barricades and see which one we want to print. Think I will print this. Once this is imported and arranged however you like, you can slice it and the program will create the path that the printer will take to make this. You can select from a number of default profiles and custom profiles you've created yourself that are specific to your needs, your printer. And there are a lot of options here. I mean a lot. But you don't need to consider all of these options. And Cura has really good tooltips in the newer versions. And there are tons of sources online to help you solve printing problems and come up with profiles that work for you. Let's try 10% infill. Infill, as the tooltip says, the density of your volume inside of the print. That is important for strength, and so the roof of these objects get printed well. But these objects are not particularly large, so I think I can get away with 10% infill and save some material. Let's slice it. Preview. Here you can see layer by layer which path the printer will take to create this, and you can spot any problems you might have before printing it out. This looks pretty good actually. I think this will print. Save. It will also show you how long it will take, 1 hour 10 minutes, and how much material you will use. 8 grams or 2.8 meters of filament for 17 cents. Save to removable drive. Eject. Let's go to the printer. Insert this micro SD card, in this case, into the printer, and then on the screen go to print, select the file and print. This is an FDM printer, meaning it melts a wire of plastic onto the build plate and onto itself line by line to create the part. And if the printer is correctly set up, that is all you have to do for the print, and the machine will do the rest on its own without your supervision. Will take a few hours, but no time out of your day. These machines used to be hard to set up, but the newer beginner machines like this Anycubic Cobra have an auto leveling print bed and are quite easy to set up. So even an amateur can put them together and get them printing within an hour and get great print results. The problem I have with these machines is if something doesn't work as it should, then you have to do troubleshoot. And these machines have a lot of sensors, a lot of motors, a lot of electronics that can go wrong. They have wearing parts. You need to replace and clean the nozzle regularly. The filament can get clogged up. So maintenance and troubleshooting is not necessarily easy and is, in my mind, the biggest downside on these machines. Other than that, they're great. You can get the material for cheap. You can get a kilogram of PLA filament for about 20 bucks. And you don't have to clean up these parts after printing at all. Also, while these machines are loud and they smell, they don't create a lot of dirt like MSLA printers do. That's why I like to use them for terrain. The resolution and detail that these machines can handle are enough. I can use the cheap material and I don't have to clean the parts up after printing. And this is the finished part. If you look closely, you can see the layer lines, and you can't print very small detail, but for a piece of scatter terrain such as this is good enough quality. At least I think so. Okay, I've downloaded the models and can now import them into the slicer. This is Lychee Slicer, the program I use for my MSLA printer. These printers use UV light to harden a UV hardening resin into plastic, and they block off part of this light through an LCD screen used as a mask, so only a bit of your build space will be exposed to the UV, and by this, layer by layer, the model will be hardened and created. This gives you great detail because modern screens have big resolutions, huge resolutions. You get 2K screens, 4K screens, 8K screens nowadays. So the pixels will be as small as 50 microns, 25 microns, and you won't be able to see them in the finished project and have great detail. It also doesn't matter how many models you put on your build plate, it hardens a whole layer of plastic at the same time. The downside is that it is quite a bit of dirty work to clean up these models after printing, and most of the resin I have used so far is very brittle. And this model came with Lychee Slicer files, so I can just open and see what the artist already did in work for me. And these models already come pre-supported, so see all the orange stuff, that is support structure, so it will print and not come apart during printing. And a good 3D artist will offer these files with support structures, and it will be test printed and should work right out of the bat. And what I will do, I will scale one of these monsters up to be a bit beefier. So, scale. And make it 50% bigger. Now that's a monster. But that also means I have to redo the support structure myself, but that's not too hard in Lychee Slicer. To prepare, first get rid of the old one. The angle it's presented as is not bad. You want as little flat surfaces as possible. Only print a small amount at the same time, and you want the least amount of supports, and in this position it looks like I don't need support all of it. What Lychee does pretty well is automatic supports. This already looks pretty good, but I will add a few manual supports, especially on these big flat areas. I will also do that for the other model, because I'm not as confident as the artist that this will print without deforming. confident that this will print without support. You can fill your build plate up completely, and it doesn't matter for the print time, because it does one layer at a time, not one line at a time, not one pixel at a time, one layer at a time. Just the build height matters for printing time. Let's slice this. My printer selected, I've got my resin selected, and in here is where you will do most of your, and here's where you will most of your adjustments, so you get clean print. As you can see, this is far less parameters to adjust than with Cura, with the FDM machine. This is actually easier to handle in that regard. I've got the free version of Lychee Slicer, so I have to watch a few seconds of advertisement before it will let me slice. And now it will process the model layer by layer, do a vertical slice that is just 50 microns thick. And while it does that, you can also check if anything looks strange. For example, if a huge blob suddenly pops out without there being any supports before that, you're looking at an unsupported structure that won't print right. Everything has to flow into each other in this screen. And once it's finished, it will give you the estimated print time, 2 hours, 3 hours almost. The resin volume, 30 milliliters, which will print both of these models for just 99 cents. So about €1, maybe €1.50 with electricity, maybe. Let's get this to the printer. I'm printing this on an Elegoo Mars 2 Pro, which I can actually recommend for a beginner. Easy to handle, makes good prints, and nowadays you can pick it up on the cheap for maybe $200. Maybe you can get a used one, because they are now selling the Elegoo Mars 3, which has double the resolution and a bit bigger print volume. But to start out, something like this is fine. I've got the data on the USB file. This here is the resin tank, and at the bottom of it is the UV light and the LCD screen. And because I haven't printed in a while, I'm stirring the resin so that the color particles are well not mixed in. Now I just have to select the file and select print, because the printer is already set up to print properly. It's not hard at all to set these things up. And then the machine will just work on its own and print the model out layer by layer over a number of hours. But you don't have to stand there and watch it do it, so it's no time out of your day. Once the print is finished, you have to clean it up and process it. MSLA printing is sadly a smelly and dirty affair. So do it in a room you're not living in, do it in a shed, do it into a well-ventilated basement. Wear proper protection when you're cleaning the parts, at least gloves, maybe a filter mask, maybe goggles to protect your eyes. I'm just wearing gloves. First thing you have to do is get the things off your build plate with a spatula and the proper settings in Lychee. It shouldn't be too hard. And then they have to be cleaned. Most resins need to be cleaned in isopropanol alcohol because they are not water solvable. There are water solvable resins, but you need a lot of water for that. And I'm not comfortable dumping this stuff in the drain. I don't want to put all of this plastic or even uncured resin into the public wastewater system. So I'm using isopropanol alcohol, and the dissolved plastic I will eventually harden out with UV light and filter it out of my isopropanol alcohol, throw that in the trash and reuse the isopropanol alcohol. You don't need a fancy washing station like I have for this, but it helps. If you are printing a lot, this is a huge time saver. And my process is as follows. First, I wash it with the machine, so to get most of the leftover resin off. Then I wash it per hand in a second container with cleaner, fresher isopropanol to get even more off. And then, when most of the plastic, or hopefully all of the plastic resin is off, I wash it in hot water. Not to wash it actually, but to soften it up, so it's easier to peel the supports off. Then be careful not to break off any parts of the model when you're breaking off the support structures. Once you've got all of your supports off, or you could do it with supports and peel them off afterwards, but I found it is easier to do it in this order. Once the supports are off, you need to cure the model. You need to harden any leftover resin that might be on the surface of the model, and you need to harden the surface of the model with further exposure to UV light. You can just put it out in the sun, that works perfectly fine, but a curing station with UV lamps such as this is more reliable. It doesn't depend on time of day or weather, and it turns the model for you. So again, if you're processing a lot of models, this is a nice thing to have. And this is the finished model. So you can see it has small details, and what you can't see are the pixels and the layers of the LCD screen and the printing process, because even with this machine they are already so small. Now to answer the question, is it worth it? Is it worth to get into 3D printing for Tabletop RPG? I think from the cool parts you can get, the models, the flexibility it gives you to print what you need when you need it, it is worth getting into it if you are a bit technically inclined. It's not super easy to use these machines, not like an office printer, but it's also not super hard, and there are great resources online that will help you out. But is it worth it from a financial standpoint compared to just buying miniatures, buying terrain? Let's start with terrain. I can print this piece of standard dungeon terrain for 16 grams of PLA, that is about 32 cents. Let's say it's 50 cents with electricity. So for 20 pieces, comparable to these Dravenforge starter set unpainted, 20 pieces would be $10, while the Dravenforge set with 19 pieces will set you back $35. So I've got a $25 difference. That means till I break even for buying this machine for $250, I would need to print 10 of these sets. I need 200 tiles. Now that sounds like a lot, but if you're really into terrain, and some people are, some people will, for example, buy this Dwarven Forge Adventure Essentials kit with hundreds and hundreds of terrain pieces for $2,000. If you are that kind of gamer, then it's worth it, even from a financial standpoint, to get the 3D printer and print these parts yourself. For miniatures, if you want a lot of custom miniatures, you have the option of buying them for $20 a miniature, or print them for half that price yourself, and you will break even after about 20, maybe 30 custom miniatures. A setup like I have for my printer will set you back about $300 again. So about 30 custom miniatures and you will break even with the cost of the machine. If you need less than that, you can get the print from Hero Forge yourself, or you can find someone to print it for you, for example on Etsy. And on Etsy you will find a huge number of 3D printing services that, for example, will give you lots of stuff from my mini factory, where you would have to pay for the STL file to begin with, like all of this Bestarium miniature stuff right here. So MSLA printing for miniatures, only worth it if you need a lot of miniature, dozens and hundreds of miniatures. So for just D&D, that is an edge case if you really like your miniatures. If you have huge groups and like to give all of your player custom character miniatures, it's worth considering. If you are into wargaming, on the other hand, and you want to put entire armies of dozens and hundreds of models on the table, then I think it's a no-brainer and you should get into 3D printing. Anyhow, that's it for today. Thanks for watching and goodbye.